Welcome to Shift. Our guest today is Reverend Kelly Chatman. And why don't you introduce yourself to everyone, Kelly?
Hello, my name is Kelly Chatman, and I am a pastor. I retired from the congregation. I'd served at Redeemer Lutheran Church for the past 20 years, and also directed the congregation's nonprofit Redeemer Center for Life for most of those 20 years. And I retired from the congregation a year ago, the beginning of March, 2 weeks before the pandemic. So it's been an interesting journey.
So a number of you know Pastor Chatman because of his Redeemer connections and the Christmas store. And I must say that you are revered. And so it is a pleasure to have you with us today. I thought it was important to talk about the events of the week. And I wondered about your reaction to my question of this, which is, what is the role of the church in public incidents such as we have this week with the shooting of Dante Wright, and now it's a manslaughter charge for the officer, Kim Potter. And there continues to be the George Floyd trial. The world seems a little upside down, and a lot of people are suffering.
Yeah, and in many ways, this is the time that our faith has prepared us for, and the church to have our faith go into action in new ways for many of us. And it's a time of disruption. The disruption is around the reality of racial injustice and how do we navigate this time? And in many ways, there's been a long history of division around race and a growing awareness in recent years with, the death of Jamar Clark and Philando Castile and George Floyd, and the list goes on. And there's just a growing awareness. And now this week, even more so, with the tragic and accidental death of Dante Wright. And so it's a challenge for us to live into the question in this time of disruption, when so many of our lives are more places of comfort. How do we move into those places? What is our calling? And also, how are we uniquely gifted to be that answer of the people of God into those places? And I believe that God has been preparing us for this in many ways, but we haven't necessarily always seen it as our role to move into those places of disruption and be the body of Christ in places that are unfamiliar to many of us.
So I want to say that, recently at Trinity, we had a survey and we have some questions that listeners were asked. And, the results are probably not surprising for any church, but there's, a sort of a division over social justice and the role of the church. And, I get that and respect both if there is to be a side, but I think what we're called to do is look beyond sort of whatever we consider to be the politics and look at humanity.
And in many ways, when I think about social justice, we think of it as like the polar of politics, and it gets enmeshed in ideology and things that lead to arguments. But really, what our faith does and what we experience and we exhibit every Sunday when we worship knowing that we are the reality of God. And so when we worship, we have this message that everybody is welcome, everybody is safe, and everybody belongs. And so I think that that's a core message and identity that we are called and challenged to take into the places where we work and we study and we play. And so often we're in those places, and we're in those places with people that are different than us, whose politic is different than us, and we don't exhibit welcome, safety, and belonging to transcend those differences. And so really, how do we exhibit that same kind of discipline as a people of God, of being welcoming, communicating that everybody is safe and everybody belongs, so that we transcend the boundaries of race, class, and culture. So you're right. I mean, this is not about politics at all. It's not about which side of the aisle you are in terms of politics, but how are we to be in a relationship with one another? And we practice that every Sunday. So why don't we take Sunday into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? That's really the work that I see for us to do.
And Kelly has written a book, and it's in draft form, manuscript form, and it's Intercultural Prelude, Stories and Conversations from Separation. So notice those words, separation to belonging. And don't we all want to belong somewhere? So how do we make our spaces both safe and welcoming for all?
And I think it's a challenge for us, because in our churches on Sunday morning, if we're not together in those differences, how do we practice that sense of belonging and safety if we don't experience that on Sunday morning? So how do we build those experiences so it expands how we practice that on Sunday morning? So I wrote the book out of my experience. I've been a Lutheran since I was in 7th grade. I love the church. I feel like the church saved my life. But I went to a Lutheran high school and a Lutheran college and a Lutheran seminary. And as an African-American Lutheran, I always had to assimilate into a culture that was almost like it didn't know I existed. But I knew that I went to those places, and that was a part of my community, because through my congregation, I had that deep understanding of belonging. And that belonging is, I'm a child of God. I'm baptized into being a child of God. And I'm not going to deny that as my core identity. And that's a gift that I believe the church has. But it's not a gift for us to keep unto ourselves. So that's the reason for the book and the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement that I now direct, is to empower us as Christians to exhibit our faith beyond the walls of our church building, and not to deny what happens in Sunday morning and in our church walls, but to see that it's our calling to take Sunday into the rest of the week, and to share that with people. And my belief is the church is the best equipped institution to transform our world.
Why is that?
Because of God loves us. God demonstrated God's love for everybody. I mean, I would say, God could have said salvation. He could have just called it in and said, okay, salvation is yours. But no, God came into the world and gave his life and spent time with people, everyday people, and exhibited what God's love looks like. I'm so glad you asked that question, Jeri, because this really is about God showed us what love looks like. And that love transcends the boundaries of difference. Now, we have a lot of things about politics that tell us it doesn't. A lot of things that say, no, stay in this camp or this place. But God's love crosses boundaries and barriers. And I know Trinity does a wonderful job of doing that, like going to El Salvador, or the ways that that story and exhibit God's love. But we need that here in Minneapolis too. We need that here too in North Minneapolis. And this is not about blame, shame, or guilt. It's about out of the relationship that we have with God. And that we like to say at the center that God calls us to be co-creators with God. And so we are in a partnership with God to show to ourselves and to the world what love looks like, the kind of love that transcends boundaries.
So what kind of love can we show Minneapolis? How do we do that? That's always the how, because I'm a Lutheran and I want to do something with my hands.
Well, that's a co-creative activity that we would invite Trinity to be in with the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement to co-create. What does love look like in Minneapolis? What can it look like? And that's something to explore together. And so, like in the book that I'm writing, and I'm a little embarrassed to even call it a book, it's really a workbook. There are stories from my life as a Black Lutheran and navigating difference and how I felt difference and my experience with that. But then each of those stories has questions at the end of it that for you in small groups or individually to answer those questions about navigating difference in your life and the life of Trinity. And the whole point about this is to practice moving beyond boundaries, to practice seeing difference not as a barrier, but as an opportunity to experience God's transforming power in our lives. And this is not for Kelly Chatman. This is for the people of God. It's for our church to be more authentically who we are, but in order that we can celebrate what it's like to walk more boldly with God.
And so there is, just to share with everyone, a smaller group that is interested in doing this. And doing this means possibly doing the IDI, which is a sort of a cultural inventory, but doing it together. And taking a look at Kelly's workbook and going through that together. I think that sometimes we think somebody else knows more than we do, and that may be the case. But that this sort of requires being vulnerable and just saying, I don't know the answers, but I noticed a St. Thomas, kind of the guy who leads their cultural diversity, break it down to each of us to say, what can I do? Or is there something that I want to do? And that's an individual question. But if we were all to say, I want to do something, there would be change.
Yeah.
I am so glad that we talked with you today. It has just been a week of turmoil, and I think it has made my stomach turn for sure. And to my friends who are of different color, different ethnicities, I know that it's been tough. Someone who is coming here to our church to speak to the women about joy is Roxanne Battle. And Roxanne actually posted something yesterday that said, I am so tired. I am so tired of talking with people how to cope and how to bring joy, because it just keeps coming back. And I think that we all want things to be better.
I'm excited for the opportunity for Trinity to exercise its muscle, faith muscle, and what that can mean for Long Lake, and how Long Lake sees Trinity, and how you walk more boldly and bravely around this whole thing about how do we transcend differences? How do we model, kind of getting out of our sandbox, right, of security. And again, it's really important to say this is not about blame or shame. It really is about what we get to do as people of faith. Now, to get to know our neighbor to get to know us, and what that means for a Lutheran congregation, to be known for more than how nice our building looks, or it really is just this, just that people get to know us, and for us to get to know.
Yeah, we all want to be known, don't we?
Yes, yeah. Whether they join our church or not, it's about our witness.
Yeah, our witness of love.
Yeah.
I think that you have been such a bright light for all of us, and I know that you have been through so much more than any of us know, and so I applaud that you noticed the call from God, and that your call was to really sort of assimilate and be able to speak with us.
Well, thank you. I mean, you're my church. And one of the things I learned really early in life, that the reason I became a pastor is I know I love God and I love people. And everything else is like, those are add-ons, but I know I love God and I love people. And I know that that's the core of our church too. So it's a partnership.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the message I take away is show love, and think about playing outside your sandbox. And we are church. We are the church together. Thank you.